now starting with our first session, which is on the e-commerce opportunities and challenges, where we will be discussing about the evolution of the e-commerce, the metadata, hygiene, growth and promotions, the counterfeiting and piracy, and the do's and don'ts to make sure that we are able to harness the opportunities. For this session, we have our moderator, Mr. Sahil Gupta. We have our speakers for this session, Ms. Rashi Bahadur, who's the category leader books at Amazon India. I would like to invite Mr. Pulkit Tiwari, head marketing of the media Amazon India, Mr. Gaurav Sabbarwal, who's the managing director at Prakash Books, and Mr. Goldie Dhama, partner regulations, public policy data, privacy, IP, M&A at Deloitte.
So I welcome all the speakers. Rashi, Pulkit, Gaurav, Goldie. So we all are aware how e-commerce is transforming the way we as consumers buy products online. And I think COVID over the last 4-5 years in the post-COVID era, it has only expedited the way trends change. So without any further delay, my first question would be to you, Rashi. So with your experience as the category leader at Amazon India, how do you think the consumer trends in books have changed over the last 5 years, say in the pre-COVID era versus the post-COVID era? And we would especially like if you could comment from a more category point of view, like some of the categories of books which might be doing well, some of the price points which work better than the others. So we would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sahil, first of all, for having us here. I think it's been a fabulous morning so far. And it's a privilege to be a part of this absolutely esteemed group of publishers here. Thank you so much. And so, to your question on, I think, changing consumer trends, etc. I don't know if most of you are aware, but Amazon started with books, right? That was back in '95, our first category when we started with books. So it's been like an time-tested, ever-growing category for Amazon, very, very close to our heart. I think for the past 5 years, if we talk about, it's been defining pre-COVID and COVID, like you said, right? It's been a marked difference, right? I think COVID was a massive tailwind for all of us in e-commerce. And we saw, and that was for all the right reasons, the kind of convenience, and et cetera, that we offered at the doorstep for our consumers. We've seen that translate and manifest for books as well. Consistent double-digit growths is what we've seen, high double-digit growths. In fact, for some of our publishers, some of them will agree and know that we've grown upwards of even 200% over these 5 years odd. So I think it's wonderful. We feel great about it.
Feel free to give us some names of publishers who are doing very well.
Absolutely. I mean, I can name quite a few, but maybe I will pick specific categories where we've seen really, really high growths, and some of those, and those are both in academics as well as discretionary reading or leisure reading or fiction reading, as we call it. One of our publishers is sitting right here. So yeah. And in academics as well, I think that has been super encouraging for us, because that kind of talks to us about consumer trends where we're seeing stickiness and preferential, and Amazon being seen as a preferential destination for shopping even academics, whether it's school books, early learning, higher education, exam preparation. These are some of the categories which are the fastest growing categories. And I must qualify that these categories are not just growing in English. So it's also our regional languages which are seeing tremendous growth. In fact, it's the fastest growing. So, and it's not just Hindi. We have Hindi, Marathi, Telugu, Tamil, most of the regional categories as well, which are seeing huge growths online. And this is, I think COVID was a tailwind, but it stuck, right? So we continue to see those similar trajectory of growth on e-commerce, which is very, very heartening, and also gives us the boost, and we're kind of always discontent We want to find more and more ways in which we can bring all possible readers across the country on our platform. So we do whatever it's required, whether it's about being the largest store, which we are, because we do host the largest selection of books across languages, across different categories. We cater to about 99.67% pin codes in the country. So we are able to reach. So we have the books, we are finding the readers. Apart from that, we do offer the most authoritative pricing, which is, being a tech platform, we're able to sort of, spin that flywheel in that fashion. And of course, from a consumer perspective, I think where the differential advantage also comes is the wealth of information. We host about 18 to 19 million titles today. And in that, the amount of information which the consumer can look at on a detail page, for instance, whether it's about the title, about the book, reviews, etc., I think is sort of invaluable. And so I think that is what e-commerce and Amazon brings to books.
Just one thing, Rashi, like you mentioned about vernacular books also and Amazon having a vast display of the same. I think a lot of times we as publishers, when we sit together, one of the things we talk about is the price point. Do you think the overall price point of books in terms of customer preference, the kind of book, suppose he used to prefer a book which is 100 rupee price more than a book which is, so has that buying price point gone up? That sweet spot has gone up for customers across categories?
Well, it's moving in the right direction, I would say. It is increasing, and as the mix of what we sell changes, so does the price point. So I think I'd leave it at that.
So, Pulkit, my next question is to you, and Rashi briefly touched upon points of discoverability and how much data a consumer can see when he lands onto, say, any product page or a book page. So, from a marketing point of view, and one of the questions which all the publishers would have here is, how does one publisher make his book discoverable per se, right? We all have our listings done on Amazon, but discoverability is one of the challenges that we face. So the question is like, what are some of the tools at a publisher's disposal, like in context with whether it's AMS or things like event calendars that you have, and what would be the relevance of, say, catalog hygiene per se for better discoverability of books, if you could elaborate on that?
Sure, Sahil. Thank you so much for inviting on the panel. I think I'll start with the fact that if you look at this category, right, like before we move to discovery, let's understand the consumer journey. Unlike many other categories, if I look at books, people enjoy the browsing experience, right? And more so for discretionary books, right? Like they love to spend time. If I have to talk of so many other categories, like say pharmaceuticals, nobody likes to really spend time looking at medicines, right? So for a books category, people love to explore and browse. I think in the manner in which e-commerce work, there are things which are differential versus offline, right? So we don't have the touch and feel, and we don't have the sound of the pages and the smell of the book, etc., right? Like, but what we offer is what Rashi briefly touched upon, is the vast selection, right? So in the pursuit of that, if I have to think about how consumers go through one title to another, more than any other category when they have time, right? Let's say, for example, when they're browsing on a weekend, there are times when a consumer who typically buys like 6 to 8 reading books in a year spends like 15 to 20 books before he decides what to buy. Right? And that hopping or discovering one book related to another is a magic of what we call as data quality, right? Because in the digital ecosystem, you can have clear signals about consumers and you can bucket them into cohorts. So you can identify that these kind of people who read this book will also be interested in that book, right? Which we call as personalization. So as I said, right, like versus an offline retailer or a store, the advantage is that a bookstore at Amazon or say any other digital platform can change many times in the same day, right? Depending on which customer is visiting, right? So you have that flexibility. And in that spirit, I would say that when it comes to showcasing or highlighting your books, there are some obvious tools which publishers or sellers can leverage to push that book in front of customers, which you spoke of, which is advertising. But I think there is the responsibility of the marketplace to also build products as a customer obsessed marketplace, which enables it free of cost also. Because of that reason, like Amazon has been someone which has pioneered investing in personalization, upselling, cross discovery, life cycle marketing, right? So for me, it's important whether there is advertising or not, but the right consumer should be able to find the next possible book automatically, right? So we spend a lot of time building that.
Yeah. So Pulkit, exactly. So my understanding is that, and I have been doing e-commerce since 2009, and I do understand there are certain things like suggested reads which are like sacrosanct for Amazon and not tampered with cause of advertising. So that exactly why I question that in terms of catalog hygiene and metadata and things like A+ content, how much does that help in making your book more discoverable? That is what we wish to understand.
I think a lot of tools that Amazon or like even search platforms like Google make, they have a certain filtering of what we call as hygiene, right? So trustworthy information to the customer is like a central tenet, right? And that trustworthy information, the publisher or the seller can leverage on the detail page using A+ content, etc. And I think there is clear differential numbers to say that if you have a very high data quality, the possibility that you will be able to convince the customer is like in multiple times higher, right? So just to quote an example, like every possible, so again on the digital, the power is that you don't have to rely on anecdotes. You can do experimentation, right? It's like a real-time experimentation library. You can choose to say, I will show somebody a Amish Tripathi book where he's having a video talking about the book versus 50% of the people who will not see that video. And then you can measure the uplift, right? Every time we have added more information which is relevant to the consumer, we have seen an uplift on that. At the same time, there has been so much of analysis done on the structure of how we show it, right? So if you see our display pages, it has evolved over time, right? So now the things that consumers look for, which is the size of the book, the publication year, etc. There's a lot of effort done to showcase it upfront, right? Along with the effort on data quality, there's also an effort on stack ranking the right markers of that data quality early. It does play a very big role. On the advertising, I think the funnel, if you have to put it, the most important thing is that are you really targeting the right audience, right? Because that's the top of the funnel. Once they are on the page, are you showing them the right information? That's the second part of the funnel.
Maybe if you'd allow me to sort of add on this, Pulkit did refer to a marker, right? So internally, one of the metrics that we track for any catalog is what we call IDQ, which is basically item data quality score. And each one of us is responsible to ensure the quality, metric is high. The analogy is that that's the only sort of salesperson we have online, right? When a consumer comes online, that's the information he has available to make that purchase decision. In academics, for instance, a new edition versus an old edition, unless done properly, is unlikely to get discovered by the consumer. So that's the kind of role that data quality sort of ends up playing, and we have tools and instruments.
Is there a way for publishers to get to know what's the IDQ score for their particular listing? Like, is there a way to check that also?
Yeah, we do have it on the. Gaurav, you want to take that? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Amazon provides IDQ scores. You have to have an account manager to work with Amazon. And that's one of the things we track very closely as a publisher. And that helps, not just in reducing your ACOS and spends or reducing your overall expense to make your product visible. But as he said, that's your sales guy. If that sales guy is not presenting the right face, books won't sell. Yeah.
So actually, Gaurav, I wanted to ask you this only. Like, see, so you don many hats, right? So you are a very successful publisher yourself. You are one of the biggest distributor. So we, like Rashi talked about the consumer trends from a platform perspective, right? And you natively have been selling both in the offline domain, and now you are one of the leading sellers for online. So do you see certain genres really, like coming of age and really doing well in the e-commerce space? And like when Pulkit mentioned a lot of the tools that he mentioned, is there any particular tool or resource which you feel you have worked with and have deployed and has really, you've got a lot of success for that? So maybe you can give us a publisher perspective on that per se.
Right. To address the genre question first, I mean, I think we've seen a lot of growth in the children's genre over the last few years. We're seeing a lot of growth now in the vernacular section. That's even Amazon themselves is targeting tier 2, tier 3 cities, and then in conjunction with them, we're also working very close. Not just Amazon, even other e-commerce platforms. We see a lot of growth in that area, in the vernacular section. Other than that, I think there is growth in fiction as well. So there is a broad growth, I mean, and there's a lot of interest and readership in the country that is we see now.
And what tools do you think have really worked for you, like
Right.
in terms of whether it's AMS or any other thing?
Right. So I think if I were to point out one tool or two tools, it won't be correct. I'll be honest with you. I mean, let me start with saying that, of course, the IDQ score, or even, I mean, in terms of Amazon, it's called the IDQ score, but maybe another e-commerce platform would be addressing it differently. But the data quality on the e-commerce platform is very important. But then you have to look at it as a 360-degree approach. You have to see, are you doing enough social media? Are you creating enough buzz on offline? Are you, is the product right? Is there some kind of conversation in different other medias happening or not? So it has to be a 360-degree approach. While you will spend money on Amazon or on any other platform like Zomato or Flipkart or these things, but this spend will not be justified if you don't have a 360-degree approach, because then what will happen, your ACOS will be so high that you won't make money. So it has to be a holistic approach where we peg the product in such a way that there is conversation in various different platforms at the same time.
So I think what I understand is that customers landing on your product is one side of the story, right? Eventually it has to translate into conversions, right? So, and you have different things that need to be done to attract customers first to your product page and then have that inevitable conversion which leads to revenues, right? So Goldie, one thing, so you have extensive experience advising top companies on various policy matters, and we have been talking about more from a consumer's perspective. One of the things which often get talked about, and I think more so in the global arena than perhaps India, is data privacy amongst other regulations. So I would like to understand in context with e-commerce selling, what does the Indian law say, and what are some of the policy and regulations which we as publishers or manufacturers should be aware of? Could you throw some light on that?
Yeah, that's a very wide question. But just to give you a context, so India is bringing in a data privacy law. The law was actually introduced in August of 23. We expect the rules to come out anytime now, right? That's what the government has been saying. But if you see the context is simple, right? Once the law is implemented, anybody who processes digital personal data is now required to take appropriate consent and also required to safeguard that personal data. Now, the important element in the e-commerce, or for that matter in every supply chain or a value chain, is to demonstrate and understand who is the data fiduciary. A data fiduciary is defined as an entity which is the one which actually is the originator of the purpose for which the data needs to be processed, collected. In that context, depending on the contractual arrangement between the publisher and the e-commerce company or e-commerce platform, it becomes very critical for both the publisher and the e-commerce platform to understand who is the data fiduciary. Because at the end of the day, they are liable for any breaches if they happen. Now, the other element which is important is that under the Indian law, beyond the fiduciary, you also have a data processor. A data processor is somebody whom the fiduciary gives data for processing on their behalf. Now, unlike some other laws in the world like GDPR, the Indian law prescribes the penal consequences only on the fiduciary. To give an example, that if I am a fiduciary and I have given data to you to process on my behalf and the data gets breached at your level, still I am responsible. So effectively, adequate safeguards need to be built into the contractual arrangement between the fiduciary and the processors to safeguard both the parties. Now, I think that's one element, but just taking a cue, there are multiple rules which govern the e-commerce landscape. Both Rashi and Pulkit will be already aware of it. But I think the most important one is the Information Technology Act, the Consumer Protection Act, for the reason that under the Information Technology Act, there's a specific section which deals with intermediaries, and we have the intermediary rules which basically provide a safe harbor to any platform for publishing or dealing with any data which is not their own but a third-party data. And there has been a lot of regulation with respect to it, including a Supreme Court judgment, so on and so on. I won't go into details, but the point is that there are multiple laws in this domain which needs to be considered for both by the publishers and the intermediaries.
One thing which I want to ask Willie is that one of the challenges which publishers face is to do with piracy, right? So that's one of the biggest challenges, both from the point of view of a fraudulent seller or an unauthorized seller selling a book, or say somebody who may or may not be authorized but is selling a fake copy, for example, like a photocopied product or something. So from both sides, from a consumer experience point of view, it really hampers their experience. So what do you want to say from a consumer point of view, like how can he solve that issue? Like if somebody gets a fake book, what is he supposed to do? And how can, say, a publisher, safeguard their IP? Because we all are publishers here and we put in our blood and sweat and creating books, and a lot of times these pirate issues, sometimes they become a deterrent and we are a little hesitant, should we be selling, should we not be selling? So how can publishers safeguard themselves from that, if you could?
I think the simple answer is try and get a registration from an IP standpoint as early as you can, right? Both from a brand standpoint and a copyright standpoint. If you're thinking of a book title, register it today. Much earlier, even at the level of conceptualization, if I may, right? Because in India, there's no better protection than a registration, because it demonstrates ownership for you. I think that is the baseline, if I may, right? Most people don't do it, unfortunately. But I think that is, at least our experience is that if you have that in place and then track it to see if there is anything which is happening which should not happen. Whether you file a suit, whether you do a takedown, if there is any breach happening with respect to your intellectual property. I have Amazon on the panel. So Amazon runs a great brand registry, right? Which solves a lot of problems, which basically means that if you are trying to register a title or sell a title, say a third party is selling a title, then there is a process by which Amazon tries to ensure that the seller is an authorized agent or a representative by selling an OTP to the legal firm, and they will then use that OTP to then confirm. All of that stuff happens. So every platform has built some mechanism to try and safeguard, on this account. From a customer standpoint, I think if you do face a challenge, then obviously there is enough safeguards built into the law, and most platforms have built mechanisms where a customer can actually then go and seek a grievance redressal if they receive something which is not correct.
So, Goldie, just to make it a little easier for our delegates here, so you previously just talked about law which talks about intermediary, right? And the entire e-commerce model is built around marketplace. So there is a seller A selling to a customer B, right, via a platform, say Z, could be Amazon, could be any other, and the buyer claims that I've got a fake product or an unauthorized product, and so whose per se liability is it is? So who's supposed to compensate him? वो ईंटें आ रही हैं वो मोबाइल फोनों की जगह, तो किसकी जिम्मेदारी है?
This is $1 million question with no answer, unfortunately. As I said, it's not an easy question to solve, and Amazon colleagues will know the answer better than I do. If you look at, and sorry for being legal on this, but if you look at the law per se, the law says that an intermediary is not responsible for the content of the seller, and I'll make it as laymanish if I may, right? So if you have taken you've done due diligence, right? You have stated very clearly the seller is, in your example, A, selling this product at this price, all of that stuff. Then, unless there is a court order which requires the intermediary, in this example Z, to either take down that product, that content, they don't have any other responsibility. Most platforms will do much more than that, right? The law may require something, but most platforms go way and above that. There have been discussions in the government to, and it's all in public domain, to at some point change the rules and bring in new laws to take down the safe harbor rules which are applicable. I'm not sure when that happens or if that happens, but I think it's a point that if one can really demonstrate, both as a publisher or as a platform, to say that this is a product which is not supposed to be on the platform, then I think it becomes a responsibility of everybody in the value chain to try and ensure that it does not stay there.
Gaurav, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I just want to say that earlier we were talking about brand registry at Amazon, and so we have a dedicated desk in our publishing house where a person actually tracks. We trademark all our brand names. That's very important, not just in India, across the world. And any publisher who's selling on e-commerce platforms in India or any other part of the world should do that, or as a publisher as well. So now we're able to block fraudulent sellers, we're able to block fake books and all of that across the world. Because Amazon Brand Registry does not recognize you as a publisher unless your publishing house has a trademark. So those things are extremely important, and we're able to do that on a global level, sitting here in India with those trademarks in hand.
So, Rashi, would you like to add anything to that from a consumer's standpoint as well? Like, if I am getting something which is say pirated, it may not be of use to me, it might be very shabby, like from a book's perspective. So, anything would you like to add to that from a consumer perspective? What can they do? What options do they have?
Well, I think, yeah, and from a consumer perspective, we obviously have mechanisms in which a consumer can report, having received something that was not the planned purchase. And it takes its course. There's a complaint mechanism, there's an investigation that happens on the product, and depending on what the investigation reveals, an action is taken.
But I think, Sahil, just to add, right, we are talking of e-commerce opportunities and challenges. The question, which is the $1 million that you asked, right, कि ईटे आ रहे हैं तो कौन जिम्मेदार है? We are in a digital ecosystem, right? So you do a mistake in digital, it's not that the word of mouth reaches 5 people. It reaches 5,000 people, right? And that's why we are talking about issues which have not happened to you. Right? You might not have received a brick, but you know about it.
Right.
And that's the flip side of it. And that is why when you have an ecosystem which is evolving and shaping, the programs like brand registry or transparency or use of artificial intelligence will eventually evolve to solve a lot of that much more rapidly, because we are in the digital ecosystem and people will make that noise, right? So just to put that perspective.
So Gaurav, one thing I wanted to understand, and there are a lot of small publishers here who are trying to make their mark in the digital ecosystem. And there are two schools of thoughts, whereas with e-commerce being a marketplace model and you being a publisher and distributor, I think you are in the best position to answer this question. What would your unbiased advice be to, say, a small publisher? Should he start selling directly on e-commerce and maybe route it through you?
Unbiased.
Unbiased is the key word here.
No, I'll tell you from experience, okay? We wanted to sell our books in Amazon US, right? And we were working with Amazon directly for years. They have an Advantage program in US, and we were working through that program for years. And we were sending our books, had a small warehouse, all of that. We wanted to scale up our business in US, right? And we were not able to do that on our own. So we decided to go with a distributor there after being present in that market for 4 to 5 years. The advantage that we realized of doing that was, of course, from stocking to having a dedicated Amazon manager to fixing our listings to all of those things which we couldn't do as a publisher being in that geography. So now that same applies when you're here in India. Like for a small publisher who doesn't have that kind of bandwidth to manage all those different parameters. They don't have an Amazon dedicated manager, they don't have an account listing situation going on. So all those things can be managed by a larger seller or a distributor in a much better way. Unbiased, I'm saying this, not trying to sell what we do. But I think that is the key. If you have scale, if you've reached a certain critical scale, a critical mass, I would say yes, go ahead and have a relationship with Amazon if you have that kind of critical mass. But other than that, if you've not reached that scale, you'll not get that attention and bandwidth at this with any e-commerce. And the advantage of being with a smaller seller or a distributor or a seller is, of course, you will do one or two platforms directly. But here, we, as a distributor, you'll be exposed to like 10 platforms, right? And of course, 2,000 bookstores.
So you have a more consolidated platform and a one-stop solution for small players.
Absolutely. I mean, if you are in our warehouses now, you go live on almost every platform from day one. So you go live on Amazon, Flipkart, Zepto, Blinkit, all from day one. So, I mean, you're not solving for one e-commerce player, you're solving for all the e-commerce players plus offline. Yeah.
So, a question to all the panelists here, and as a concluding remark. So, what are some of the, say, the per se do's and don'ts of book selling on e-commerce platforms, and what would your genuine advice be to all the publishers sitting here trying to get a handle on e-commerce selling and becoming a success like Gaurav ji already is here? So how do we do that, please?
I think, yes, since we're summarizing, maybe I have the liberty to steal a few points of the panelists that they spoke of. But I think it's more like Gaurav spoke of the 360-degree sort of, there are different things that we need to know. There's not one silver bullet right from the start of identifying your entire catalog that needs to be online, getting the right quality of the catalog. It's a discovery-based platform, so you have to do everything that's necessary to ensure that your product is delivered and represented in the right fashion. So How are you going to market it? How are you going to find your readers? How are you going to ensure that your product is available close to the consumer? You want to ship your product to somebody, a reader in Chennai, you want it to be available in a Chennai warehouse, for instance, you know. So it's that level of operational rigor, marketing, data quality. These are some of the basics, I would say. Basic hygiene, which is not very glamorous, but is what really brings us to where we need to be. So I think those are some of the success mantras from my side.
Pulkit, anything?
I think on do's, I'll maybe say three things. First is the fact that when we were reviewing the presentation earlier, right, like whether it is ONDC or what Pranav was mentioning with regards to the potential upside of this industry, right? If there is some changes culturally that we can drive in this country to readers, the upside is huge. So number one is faith on the overall growth story, right? Like let's stick to that. Number two, I would say that drop the preconceived notion, right? Whatever we have maybe experienced in business, it's rapidly changing in the e-commerce space. The price points, the formats, people were not very clear that an occasion like Diwali will become such a big gifting occasion for children books, right? Like those notions are getting disrupted. So maximize on the overall cycle of the value chain if you are in e-commerce, right? And number three, look around the corners in terms of how you study consumer data, because that's the part which is extremely democratized in e-commerce, right? You can read reviews, they will tell you about what is working for them, is it too pricey, how's the packaging, so you can leverage the wealth of that data very well.
The feedback that we get.
The feedback loop, right? Like which is unprecedented still, right? And Amazon, I would say as a platform boost on that, right? Like quite a bit. On the don'ts, I would say that whatever is a working strategy in the short term, don't stop experimenting to try new things, right? Like because you never know in a particular price point, on a particular cohort, if there is someone who can come and like disrupt it. Even for something like say academic, we still discuss very freely with regards to the cycles of how frequently we should launch new updates, what do consumers want. So be very flexible on that and don't bring those, preconceived ways of working, right? So that's the only thing I'll leave at that.
Gaurav, Goldie, would you like to add something to the closing remarks?
No, I think what Pulkit said was very, very interesting, that you have to expand the pie, You have to make sure that people who are already not reading or in that sort of ecosystem we have to make sure that currently the overall readership is not even 5% in this country. So how do we grow that pie? What kind of books we make, what kind of products we make to expand the pie? I think that's the key for a publisher. I think we should not try to copy each other and that's not going to expand the business for all of us. Potential is huge because 5% is such a small number. So that's where we should be focusing at. Two, I think we should have a strong digital marketing budget, right? Amazon or social media, or it doesn't matter. I mean, it could be spent anywhere, but you should have a budget. Without a good, strong digital marketing budget, you will not be able to expose your new idea, whatever that is.
We need a digital marketing strategy in place. Right?
Have a strong budget and a marketing strategy in place. You can have a marketing strategy, but without the right budget, it won't work. You need to spend money too, right? And third, which is very important, and which I think even Rashi pointed out, is the basic hygiene sort of metrics, right? You have to be present in various geographies, right? You have to ensure that you have the same day delivery, right? In each geography, like Bombay, Delhi, it should not take 6 days for the product to get to you. People won't buy it. Or you want to be on Blinkit, it could come in 15 minutes. Or you should be in bookstores around the country. So I think the basic hygiene is extremely important. The data quality, the presence in, and these 3-4 things will really help anyone grow.
Goldie, anything you would like to add? So what should publishers safeguard against in terms of policies, anything?
2 quick points. I spoke about IP, that's important. I won't dwell upon it. The second is, I think all the speakers spoke about using digital. I think it's significantly important from a business standpoint. You know, you need to use AI technology, goes without saying. I think, or the flip side is that think of all the laws and regulations which you need to keep in mind when doing it, right? Because some of the penal consequences are so significant that you don't want to sort of be on the wrong side of it. That's all. Thank you.
So I think I think it was a very interactive discussion, and what I could gauge from this was that we are just scratching the surface. There's immense potential out there, and the relevance of catalog hygiene and a digital marketing strategy with good budgets, like Gaurav said, is of paramount importance. And I thank all the panelists here for their valuable time, and thank you.
I would request our speakers to kindly stay back. We would like to felicitate you. I would be requesting our dignitaries to also kindly step up as we now felicitate our speakers for this session. Can we have a great round of applause for Ms. Rashi Bahadur? And now I request her to felicitate Mr. Pulkit Tiwari. We have on stage with us Chairman of CapExcel, Shri Ramesh Mittalji, who's felicitating our speaker. And now I request our dignitary to kindly felicitate Mr. Gaurav Sabharwal. Can we have a great round of applause, please? And now we have our speaker, Mr. Goldie Dhama. Can we once again have a great round of applause, please? Now we have our moderator for this session, Mr. Sahil Gupta. Can we have a great round of applause? I would once again thank all our speakers and our moderator for a wonderful and an insightful first session.